Hello, this is Jeff Price from Prize Gaming. Today I'm going to go over how I create some of my maps using tile sets that I've purchased on the marketplace. So for this video, I'll go ahead and show you what I am talking about. So on Roll20, I'm going to browse the marketplace. Go to maps and tile sets. So what tile sets are? Components that you can use to make maps. So let me give you an example. I'm looking for one of the artists that I use a lot. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of different stuff. There's some abandoned spaceships. So I've used this for both D&D as well as Star Wars. So one of the artists that I really like and I purchased the most of his packs is Gabriel Packard. I'm just going to click on his names here. So click on his name and you see here's some stuff from a graveyard. But what it does is it gives you a bunch of tiles. These are all PNGs. You get a background like a ground. This is like a grassy floor. It gives you a sample of what all comes in it. So this would be great if you're trying to do a graveyard. There's a bunch of different open graves, a wide variety. They have the shadows placed. So that's an example. I'm going to scroll back up and actually go to his actual collection by clicking on his name. Okay, so Vial Tiles is one of my favorite sets that he has. These are great, especially for D&D maps. These dungeon mappers here, the tile ruin. I believe I got one of his sets that's for sewers, but he's got some really great ones, and you can use these together too. They can be placed next to each other. The forest mapper is really good. So if you want to do a forest map, this would be one I would recommend. And you get a whole lot of stuff. This one has 302 different tiles. I call them tiles, but they're basically PNG files with the shadows on them. They blend easily, seamlessly with each other. It's only $5 for this forest map pack. You can kind of see a preview of what they look like. You got different trees, overbrush. You got giant. You got caves, cliffs. If you put this on the so you get a bunch of different backgrounds. So you could do all kinds of little cliffs. And I use that a lot in one of the maps that I built recently. In fact, I'm working on building some maps for a game we are running this Sunday, Beyond the Rim. So I'm actually building some maps now for Beyond the Rim. I have already built the map for the main hull of the Saw Naylor. I don't want to go into much without doing any spoilers. Basically, it's really easy to purchase one of these if you want. It shows that you've already owned the ones that you've already purchased. Once you've purchased them, you actually got this button available that allows you to download the complete set. And I'll go ahead and click it just to show you kind of what it looks like. So it lets you do a zip file, and I usually rename this, but I've already downloaded this entire folder, and I put it in a folder called Tiles, and I have them all in separate folders to keep it organized. Okay, so if you want to go find all the marketplace purchases you have in one location, if you click on your name, My Marketplace Items is where you would go. So now all my purchases have loaded. I'm going to scroll down. This is another one. Nathan Smith makes a series that looks very similar. In fact, they try to make the title look kind of Star Wars-ish. Alright, the map I'm going to work on will involve a couple of these tiles. Once you click and download, Once you do that, then I'm going to go and show you how I put these files together. I use Photoshop, but I'm aware there's other photo editing software, so whichever you're most comfortable in, or whatever you have. I think there might be some free ones you can do this in. I'm just going to do a quick tutorial on how I put these maps together. So I'm going to create a new map. What I usually do is I make my maps 50 by 50, 50 squares by 50 squares, working within the 72 resolution. So the easiest way to set this up is to multiply 72 by 50 and you get 3,600. So I'm going to make the width and height 3,600, so it's real easy to know how many tiles to set on my grid when I'm in Roll20. Right, I like to have a black background, so I click on the little color swap here, and then I choose black. Then you can go to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to do foreground color so it's black. I like having a black background. Alright, now I'm going to try to avoid shortcuts just so I don't lose people. So I'm going to do things the old-fashioned way. I'm going to get a color, and I'm basically going to create a square that's 72 by 72, a perfect square. And I'm going to use this to create guides from. So if you click on, and I may have gone kind of fast, so your toolbar may be a little different. So if you're basically, we're looking for the rectangle tool. I think my workspace is arranged graphic and web. So if you want to find that icon in a similar workspace as mine, if you go to Window, Workspace, and set to graphic and web, you will have a layout that looks very similar to what I have. Then I'm going to click on the rectangle tool. Then I'm just going to click on the page. When I do that, a box comes up and asks me to create a rectangle, how many pixels you want. I'm going to say 72 by 72. Right. Then I'm going to click on the Move tool so that I don't accidentally resize it. So now I got my rectangle. Now another important thing to do is under View, you want to make sure your snapping's on. So make sure that's selected. And I want to definitely make sure that the guides are selected because I want to be able to snap this to guides. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a bunch of guides so that I can line my maps up properly. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So I scroll up and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Alright, next step you want to do, I already have my rollers out, but if you don't have your rollers, you definitely want to have your rollers checked. So you would go to View, then make sure that your rollers option is checked. And you can tell that they're checked because mine are set in pixels. You can do inches, but for this I recommend pixels. I'm not so much reading this as I will be using my rectangle for my guide. So start things off, if I drag my first guide and line it up, it'll snap to the edge. So that's kind of what I want to do. I want to have my square that I created snap to the edge. So I drag on the roller and I get this little line coming. So if I let go of the line over top of the roller, it disappears and it doesn't get laid. But if I drop it, if I drag the ruler, a line appears and then it snaps. So if you see, if I get close to the edge, it snaps like that. Then I let go, and now these are guides. So I got my guide set. Now if I see how that snaps, this is what I want. I want it to snap like that. And then I'm going to do another guide and let it snap to the square. Then I remove the square and let it snap. So I'm basically going to do this. I'm going to do it from the top as well. Snap it. And I'll just do this until I have 50 squares on the top and 50 squares on the bottom. So this could take a while, but this is just, I do this once and then I save the file and call it template. So I've already done create a file that already has this done that I'm just going to go ahead and open. But this is basically what you do. You fill the whole map up with this grid, and then just to make sure you don't screw anything up, you would go to View and lock your guides. And now I can't accidentally move the guides anymore. They're not clickable. Okay, so let me go ahead and skip ahead because this could be very boring if you watch me do this for all 50 to create my grid. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a file I've already created. As you can see, I make a whole bunch of maps. All right, so like I said, I made one called Template that's already done. Here we go. So your end result will look like this. And I'm going to make sure my guides are locked. They are. Just make sure your guides are locked. You know, before I start this, there might be a few more settings you need to do. If you go to Edit, to Preferences, and under General, your preference window will show up. Make sure, if you have not done so, to uncheck Resize Image during placement and uncheck Always Create Smart Object when placing. This helps it so that it doesn't resize your images, because we don't want to do a whole lot of resizing. We want to keep them kind of similar. I believe the tiles were done in 70 pixels versus 72 pixels because Roll20 is defaulted to 70 pixels, which isn't too big of a deal. So you make sure that's set. Sometimes it'll ask you to restart Photoshop, so I would recommend doing that. So the next map I'm going to do is going to be the engine section of the Sa Nalar. I believe that's what it's called. So I've got map rivers starting off because I'll definitely want to have some water. So here we go. I got a bunch of bodies of water with rocks in them. Now this might be easy if you want to go ahead and drag your background and drop it on. All right. So I'm going to scroll and dragging it on here. And as you can see, it doesn't line up perfectly, but you can always drag it to where it snaps. All right. And since this is going to be the background, it's not really going to be noticeable if it's one extra square longer. So let me go ahead and set this. I'm going to hit Move, and that sets it. If yours did not give you the window and you need to resize it, you can always make sure your layer is selected, and you can go to Edit, Transform, Free Transform, and that gives you the ability to scale it and move it around. Okay, so if yours doesn't do that, you can go to Edit, Transform, or if you like shortcuts, it's Control-T. If you want to exit out of here and you don't want to screw anything up, you can always hit the Escape button. Okay, so I'm going to go to this folder from the Water Mapper tile set. And then I've already got the kind of forest background laid out. Now I also want to have water because a big upper portion of the map will have a large body of water. So I'm going to drag this water over, and I think this is good, and I will have it kind of funnel down. Okay, so I'm basically wanting this water to kind of narrow, almost like a V pattern. So I'm looking for something like this. So I'm going to drag this tile over, and then I'm going to, if you see the bounding box, I'm going to get it to line up in the upper right, and I'm going to drag it just a little bit so it lines up and with my guides. So now I can move it over here. Alright, so if this grid, if you want to remove it temporarily, you can hold down the Control and H button. Hold down the Control and hit the H button to hide it. Now, as we can see, that this color is not quite matching, so let me see if I can find a better tile. One thing I do for organization is I create folders on here. So I'll create a folder for the floor layers, and I will put the very bottom floor layers on there. Okay, and then I guess this will be my rivers folder, so I will put anything that's river related in here. So this might not be the tile I want. As you can see, it's not blending quite the way I want it to, so let me see if I can find a different body of water. In fact, okay, so here's the ones I want. This is the light blue, and what I want is more like this. So this is a lot larger. So let me drag this one over. Okay, see, now this one matches and blends a lot better. So I don't want to make this too confusing, so let me drag this here. Right. Then I'm going to hit return. If you hold the control button down and you click, it will automatically select an object. You can also do the same thing here by clicking the auto select, but this will do it all the time, even if you don't want it to. So now, see, it clicked on here, clicked on here. I tend to leave this unchecked, but it's a preference issue. I like to hold control and click when I want it to select multiple items, and then versus it click automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this layer. When you click delete, a pop-up window comes asking if you're sure. I'm going to hit yes. And then I am going to have this river. There we go. I'm going to have it start up at the very top. So let me go back to Water Mapper. I'm going to grab this one for the other side. I'm trying to line it up so it looks like it's snapping on, connecting with the guides perfectly. Then I hit return. Okay, and then I'm going to move this up and over. It snaps, as you can see, and bring it up just a little bit more. There you go. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the move tool quickly and move this down some more. Alright, because it looks like this water is good here. Now I can go back to the marquee tool, and it looks like I can select here, and what this does is instead of deleting it, this creates a mask and hides stuff. I usually do mask. I'm more of a fan of not deleting something so I can put it back later. And as you can see, if I zoom in, I've deleted a little too much, but not to fear. If I look at my layer level, there's a mask level and there's the regular level. If I messed up, I can always go here. And when you're in the mask mode, if you have color, see, like I'm on the regular mode, I have a green and yellow. If I go to the mask mode, it's now black and white. So black is transparency and white is opaque or opacity. So if I want to bring that on, I just flip these, and then I can go edit, fill, and the little gap is gone. Alright, Control D to deselect, and now I can do Control H to hide, and as we can see, now we've got a seamless river up until this point. But that's basically the general gist of how I create the maps. Alright, so here's that pack, the Super Spaceships pack. So if I want to add a ship on here, I'm going to go look for the larger ones. So here's one. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this. So I'll make this a little bigger. This is a higher resolution image. So I can make it a little bigger than what its original size was. So that looks pretty detailed still. It looks like a 3D model. You'll notice there's no shadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go grab one of my trees so I can have an idea of, depending on how big the tree is, to have an idea of how big to make the shadow on this. So this one looks kind of like a small tree. Put that on there. And if I go and get a little bit bigger tree, let's see, this one looks pretty big. So I'm going to drag and drop that on there. Oh yeah, much bigger. Alright. Now if I hide the grid, I can kind of get an idea. The further the shadow is away from the object, the bigger the object appears to be. I'm going to go click on the move tool. I'm going to click on the ship, and then if I double click on the layer itself, off its name, because you don't want to rename it, so this window pops up. On this window, I'm going to move it so we can see the tree and use it as a reference. I'm going to click on the word drop shadow, and the drop shadow options appear. By default, it gives you something similar to this. So this is where the sun is pointing, so we can adjust this. It gives you a little preview over here as well as it shows up on the ship. So try and have it so it looks like it's coming from the same angle that the sun's coming from the map. Then I'm just going to adjust the distance. And now it makes it look as though the ship is further off the ground. I have the trees on a higher level so that the shadow does not cover up the tree. So then I'm going to hit OK. And that's how we add a shadow in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and bring it in. So going back to Roll20, to add your map, I'm going to add one of the maps I built earlier, doing the same technique, just to show how you would do it. So create a new page, and that creates you a map way down at the bottom. Alright, I'm going to go to my settings, and I know my map's 50 by 50, so I'm going to do 50 by 50. And then I'm going to hit save. And it's also a good idea to name it. So this is the main hull. Right. Then next you want to do is go to the toolbar. It's defaulted to objects and tokens. I want to go to map and background. I'm going to zoom out so I can see most of the map. So this screen is not very high resolution, so I'm going to zoom out to as far as I can within reason. Then I'm going to go and get my map. Alright, so I save my map in here. This is some other maps I've made using the same type of techniques, using a lot of the tiles available on the marketplace. Alright, so main hull. So I'm going to drag this over and drop it onto the map. Okay. I've already dragged this on here, so it's actually in my files already. So if you've already had the map and you want to put it on another page for some reason, it'll show up under my library. So I'm just going to head and do it this way. That way I'm not taking up more space, because even with my level access, I'm still limited on amount of space I can have taken up. So then I'm just going to drag it, and I'm going to use a roller ball to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and it will line up to this corner, and there we go. So this is a different map I worked on earlier, but you can see the river elements. I used the forest tree mapper, and then I also used a ship. And then as you can see, I use those little cliffs. I put the little rocks, put some little tree from other packs, but this is how you make a pretty interesting map. And then if you want, you can So we can go and grab some creatures. Let me go back to the tokens layer. Let's go ahead and grab a Nexu. I'm going to go copy it, right click copy. I'm going to go back here. And let's say I want this in adventure and I don't want the players to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the GM layer and paste it on the GM layer. There you go. So now only the GM can see it. I can have it hiding in that trees for when the players come around. Then when we're actually in the game, and if I am GMing this, I would go back to the GM layer, click on the token, right click and say layer, token layer. And then you go back to the token layer to move it. So it's simple as that. One thing I'd like to touch on that I forgot to mention in the last video. There's the next. It looks pretty nice on this map. One thing I forgot to mention is if you're copying and pasting from the SWA website that I provided last group, these are on different lines. And one thing I noticed that if you have your properties on a different line, it kind of breaks things. So let me give you an example. I click this, I get a message like this. That is because it does not like carriage returns inside of the quantities box. So if you ever get an issue like that, remove any returns. So, and then if I click it again, it's fixed. So just want to throw that in. I forgot to mention that last video. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Feel free to leave any questions you might have, questions or suggestions, and I can address them in the next video I create. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.